Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Woolly Wonka Fibers podcast. My name is Anne, and today is Saturday, March 31st, 2018. Popping in to do my bi-weekly shop and knitting and spinning and reading podcast update. So it's been about 2 weeks. And I hope everybody is doing great. If you're a new viewer, welcome. Thank you for taking the time to check me out. And if you're a returning viewer, as always, thank you for continuing to watch me, support me, like, thumbs up, comment, all that good stuff. So let's see, a quick life update. Last weekend was my anniversary, and so I flew to DC to visit with my husband, and that was a little crazy. We we had made plans for me to come to the East Coast long before he found out, which was about 2 weeks before I was scheduled to be there, that he had to fly overseas for business. And so I flew in Thursday, and he actually was still overseas and didn't get home until dinner time on Friday. So I was pretty proud of myself because making my airline connections was not something I haven't done before, but I made my connections, got into DC, got myself on the metro. I couldn't find my metro card, my smart card for the DC metro, so figured out how to buy one of those and how to get myself to his apartment and let myself in. I actually had dinner with my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and my nephews on Thursday night. They were kind enough to invite me over for dinner and actually came and picked me up, which was great. So I didn't have to get back on the metro and ride to their house. So my husband got in on Friday, like really jet lagged. He basically ate dinner and went to bed. And then Saturday we got up and we went to Chincoteague, which if you are someone who is a girl who is horse crazy, you probably know Chincoteague because Misty of Chincoteague was written about that barrier island off the coast of Virginia and Maryland. There's two wild pony herds that live there, and it was quiet enough that we saw the ponies that are on Chincoteague several times. The one morning we took like a 3-mile walk. You walk out from a parking lot out through a marsh and then kind of back into the trees and then back. You have views of the ocean and then you get back to the parking lot. And the ponies were actually out. It was kind of blustery and cold. They were on the tarmac road, which is closed to car traffic except for a few hours every day. And the ponies were out sleeping, even though there was sort of this herd of people right around them. So, it was fun to see them, but having owned horses, there's only so much excitement in a horse taking a nap. So it was fun and we enjoyed it, and that was great. They're really scrubby little animals. They've got these little skinny legs and little teeny tiny hooves, and then they're constantly bloated because all of the grass they eat has a really high salt content. Anyway, did the visitor center, had a couple of very nice days together, and then I got back on the plane and flew home Tuesday, which was a nightmare. Well, I take this back. It could be worse. It can always be worse, right? But let's just say that it was not as pleasant an experience as I would have liked to have had. Got up at 4:15, got to the DC airport at 5:15, got on my plane. We were en route to Dallas, and originally the deal was we were going to be into Dallas like 25 minutes early, which was great. I had about an hour layover, which I thought, perfect, I'll get off, I'll get a cup of tea, hop back on the plane. I was supposed to be home by like quarter of 12, quarter of noon that afternoon, and I'll just chug up the hill and get the dog and all of that. Yeah, so when we got within spitting distance of Dallas, and this is Dallas Love Field, I guess Dallas-Fort Worth was an even bigger mess, if that's possible. But Love Field, the weather was so bad from thunderstorms that we circled and circled and circled and circled and circled. And then the captain came on and said, "Hi, we're almost out of fuel, so we got to go to Houston because they still won't let us land." So I feverishly got out my iPhone and I was looking for alternative flights, and I was like, excellent, there's one that'll leave out of Houston at 12:20. I could get on that and I could still get into Albuquerque. That was a direct flight. I'll do that. So I'm trying to get on that flight, and we land in Houston and they won't let us off the plane because their plan is for everyone to go back to Dallas. And I already knew I'd missed my connection. Yeah, the time it took us, the 38 minutes it takes to fly from Dallas to Houston. Yeah, because we'd circled so long, we were like almost half an hour late by the time we embarked for Houston. Holy cow. So after refueling and after they finally yelled at people to go sit down so we could take off again, we took off and we finally got back to Dallas. It was pouring, but the really bad thunderstorm cells had diminished, so they let us land. I did get back on another flight, but I had almost a 5-hour layover in Dallas, just wandering around waiting to get back on my plane. And so, of course, I was scrambling because I had no one to pick my buddy Lizzie the dog up at the kennel, so I had to call and see if they could keep her another night, which is a little, it's been spring break, so things have been really busy. They were lucky. Luckily enough, they had space for her, and they said, don't worry about her. She can stay another night. But got into Albuquerque about 5 o'clock, and it's about an hour and 45-minute drive for me, but it wound up being almost 3 hours to get home because we had blizzard conditions north of Santa Fe for the hour, basically just south of Santa Fe, through Santa Fe, and north as I was continuing home. I know I've been complaining like all season that we haven't had any snow. It just would have been great if we could have not had the snow the one day that I needed there not to be snow. Can't please anyone, can you? Okay. So I'm home now. I'll be home for 2 weeks before I depart for Loveland, Colorado, and Yarn Fest, which is the 12th, 13th, and 14th of April. I will be there, booth 602. If you're attending for classes or live in the area and are coming out for the market, please stop by and say hi. It's always a fun time. I really love going there. I will also be doing a book signing for Free Spirit Knits, my book that was published with Interweave Press. That will be Friday at 4 o'clock, and it will be in my booth. So if you don't have a copy and would like to pick up a signed copy, please swing by and do that. We can get you taken care of. So that said, let's talk about what else is happening. Just a couple of little notes. I'll start with one and then we'll talk about knitting. I've got some knitting, some spinning, and books to talk about. Well, a book to talk about. And there'll be some other news mixed in with the knitting, so we'll go on to that. First off, mini news. I'm in the process of revamping the website, so if you haven't had a chance to take a look over there, head on over. I think it looks really great. I hope it's more accessible and easier to navigate, and there's some other information there that hopefully helps kind of keep everybody up to date with stuff going on. That's one of the reasons that I switched platforms, and I really like Squarespace and how they have things laid out. I think it's very visual, which I like. So that is happening over there. The Woolly Wonka Palooza is kicking off April 1st for the April topics, which are either the color white, something with sparkles, excuse me, someone is snoring behind me on the floor, Miss Lizzie, or a shawl. Got lots and lots of options there. I think it'll give you tons of things to choose from. Check out the post in the Woolly Wonka Ravelry group, and the forum post that I set up for April will talk to you guys about some pattern suggestions and some yarn suggestions and give you the coupon code to use in the store both for yarn and then my Ravelry pattern store pattern sale. Sorry, pattern sale. That shouldn't have been hard. Anyway, all right, let's move on to knitting. I have finished the socks that I started for the February Wonkapalooza prompt, which was pink. And hey, you know, silver lining, right? I was in Dallas for eons and eons and eons waiting for my flight. So I basically knit a sock and a half. All right, go me. These are the Winter Rose socks. Color is washed out here. It is much more vibrant. Yeah, the camera is not picking that up. I will link to my project page so you can see what they actually look like in real life. Kind of crushed strawberry color. They're not pale pink, but they do look it. This is the colorway Heartbreaker. It is on my Rhiannon sock. The pattern is Winter Rose Socks by Helen Stewart, aka Curious Handmade. I will link to the pattern page for these as well. Love them. They are cute. They are lacy. I don't know. There's just something about pink and lace in socks that's just very girly feeling to me. Give you a little close up of the stitch pattern. It's a pretty easy lace pattern, and the socks are written in 3 sizes. The only change I made for the medium was I used the Fish Lips Kiss heel because I like that. That's just kind of my go-to sock heel. So yeah, so those are done, an actual finished item. I had been mulling over what I might want to do for the Wonkapalooza for April, and I think I'm going to stick to just a spinning project. With that week of travel in there to go to Yarn Fest, I'm not sure I'm going to get something else knit. Also because, exciting news part number 2, I have been working on kind of going back and forth with my friends Dennis and Jeffrey, who are the yarn guys. I've mentioned them before. I do work for them, design work for them quite a bit. This year we're doing all the 4 Oham alphabet trees, still doing those kits for them. But we got into discussion about some ways that maybe I could help them out and they could help me out. So one of the things that's going to happen is in the future for several of the Stitches shows, starting with the New Stitches event that's in Pasadena in November. It's November 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 2nd, 3rd, 4th. I'll look up the dates. I'll put a link down below. I will be vending through their booth. So we're going to kind of combine forces. They've added on some extra square footage to their larger booth. And so they'll be carrying more of my products there, which will be so helpful for me because it means I don't have to do all the setup and take down by myself. I don't have to vend by myself all day. You know, we can kind of spell each other. I can maybe leave the booth and use the restroom occasionally, or get a cup of tea, or just have like 30 seconds of quiet. So that will be happening. And then the flip side of that is that I'm going to be doing some more design work for them. And we'll be kicking off a new design collection in the Stitches Pasadena show in November. And so I've already started working on that. And it's going to be another Southwest Santa Fe type themed collection, which I'm really excited about. I will put a link to my Pinterest inspiration board below so you guys can see some things, nothing that I'm duplicating, but just some things that, like the color palettes or the shapes of things that inspired me to put together this collection. And I think it's going to be really fun. We're going to kit it up in both a wool and a cotton option, and all ladies things, by the way. I guess I should say that. Yeah, so that is what I am furiously knitting on right now. I know it seems like it's a long way out, but to put together, you know, 6, 7 pieces, more than half of which are garments, and get everything tested and tech edited photographed, all the layout done, get the books off to print, all of that takes time. So, 6 months away is not actually that far away. So look for those coming on, but know that that's where I'm feverishly spending my knitting time these days. Started the first piece last night, which I'm very excited about. So there's that little piece of news. You can file it away. More to come on that as we get a little closer. Let's move on to spinning. Last time I talked to you all, I showed you this Falkland wool roving. It's in the colorway Some Simple Song from Funky Carolina. Very deep stash. It was from one of her fiber clubs, but it's been quite some time ago. So I have been spinning this up. This is not quite 2 ounces. I've started the second 2 ounces. This is left over from the second 2 ounces. And I have the first 2 ounces spun up. I'm shooting for a slightly thicker version this time, something like DK to worsted. Thinking some squishy mittens would be great out of this. So I have to finish the singles and then ply them. And once I do that, which should be about the time I talk to you next time, I will show you what I'm working on for these sparkly bits for the Wonkapalooza sparkle prompt. So that is where I am on spinning. It's lovely and warm here today. My crazy next door neighbor is burning stuff in his driveway and it's very smoky. So little drinks, all good. Okay, last not least, books. Let's talk about books. I only have one finished book to talk about this week because I have started a long and epic next book, which I have not finished yet. So the book that I did finish this week is Hidden Figures, which is the nonfiction book on which the movie Hidden Figures, about the female mathematicians who worked for NASA, that came out a year ago or thereabouts. Now, I haven't seen the movie. It's on my to-watch list at some point, but I decided I was going to pick up the book for, can't remember the week number, but the prompt was a book that had something to do about a secret. So I figured, the atomic bomb and the space race were both good sort of secret topics. And the fact that these women who worked for NASA as mathematicians really were kind of under the radar for a very long time. I will put a link below with the caveat that I picked up sort of the wrong version of this book, but in a way I think it maybe was a better read for me. It's the young reader's version. So I'm going to say junior high reading level, but they also didn't spend a ton of time talking about the specifics of the math, which, given my issues with math, is probably just fine. It's probably a good thing, actually, because I actually followed what they were talking about, which was wonderful. The book basically follows the careers of the 3 women who are in the film. It starts during the years of World War II when the government was looking for people who were skilled mathematicians to basically do all the computations that computers of today do, these really in-depth algebraic equations where they were testing hypotheses to see if the numbers were correct in order to produce something, whether it was a plane or eventually rockets or different things that were powered by air and jet engines. And so it was an interesting book that talked about both the contributions of this group of women who were called actually computers, but they were mathematicians, during the latter years of World War II, and then in the 50s and early 60s up to when they actually put a man on the moon. And it also talks a lot about the race relations of the time as well as gender issues of the time, because These women were from, in many cases, areas where, they still were riding in the back of the bus. They still had separate restrooms. They still had separate cafeterias. And how things changed over time, where their skills began to be more valued than um, what they looked like, or the fact that they were women, or the color of their skin, or any of those things. The fact that they were smart and that they were really good at their jobs was a career advancement ticket for them, which it was not in many other areas in the United States. So it was a very interesting book. I enjoyed it, learned a lot of interesting things that I did not know about kind of how they worked and what they did. The area that they worked in, the laboratory section that was part of NASA and is still part of NASA, is actually on Chincoteague Island. We drove past their visitor center. We didn't stop on the way in. We should have, because that was the only day they were open. They weren't open. They weren't open in the hours on Saturday when I finally thought to look and see if they would be open on Saturday, and then they were closed Sunday and we headed home Monday. So maybe some other trip we'll go back and I'll actually stop in, because I would be interested to see the museum that's connected to it. And it's in part of one of the buildings that they used for the computers. So I think that would have been an interesting kind of tie-in. And I actually didn't realize that that's where this testing facility was until we drove past it on this main road. And I was like, oh, wait, I know what that is. So good book, well recommended. I have no idea how it compares to the movie, good, bad, or otherwise, since I have not seen the movie, but a very good read of a book, really interesting. 3 amazing women. I mean, there were more than 3 women who worked there, but the women that they focus on in the book, amazing, absolutely brilliant people. Yeah, they must have been such an asset to all of the space program. I can't even fathom the work that they did to make that happen. So that is the book I have finished up. I am currently reading a book. I'm about a third of the way through it, called Life in a Medieval Town. I'll put a link below. From what I understand, this author has written several different books. They are nonfiction that are life in different eras, and he kind of covers everything from childhood or from birth to the grave, how the cities were structured, how guilds worked in this instance, because it is medieval times, but just everything you might need to know. If you love all the detail of things like that, you'll probably like these books. So again, this one is medieval, and I do find it interesting that it's focused on mostly French towns. There's some mention of things in England being different, but it is not a book that is about England. And it's set in the 13th century. The focus of the book is the 13th century, let's say the first half of the 13th century. So this has been an interesting read for me so far. My focus on history actually starts in the 14th century with more British history and tie-ins to the wool industry. That's actually, I did kind of a subset of my master's work on sumptuary laws and the wool trade between England and Flanders in the mid 14th century. So this is just before that, the century before. I also understand, I don't know for sure this is a truth, but what I've heard is that this particular book is a reference guide that George R.R. Martin used extensively when he was writing Game of Thrones to help evoke that kind of medieval feel in terms of the social structure, the living conditions, the day-to-day life, things like clothing, what you would have eaten, what would have been available to drink, that kind of thing. And I could see where this would be a great jumping off point, especially if you wanted to write fiction, or you can kind of add little extras of your own. But to give you a base from which to write fiction from, this probably is an exceptionally helpful book. So it certainly could be a truth. It's a long book, so you got to really be into it. And the first chapter is a little draggy. I'll definitely say that. But once you get past that, where he's kind of setting the stage, the rest of it is a good read. Obviously, it's not a novel. It's not exactly plot driven, but it is a very interesting book. So I will recommend that, even though I'm only about a third of the way through it. I'll be glad to, fill you in on the rest of the details once I get through it over the next couple of weeks and actually finish it. But I think that's it for today. So, okay, doing pretty good, 25 minutes. I hope everybody has a great Easter weekend if you celebrate that. If not, I hope that you're having a wonderful start to spring, since the spring equinox has come and gone. It's crazily warm here today, so I'm going to now pop off and go sit outside and do a little porch knitting if I can. And I will check back in with you guys when I am back from Yarn Fest. So there will not be a recording exactly that weekend. It'll be sometime early the week following Yarn Fest. So mid-April is when I'll check in with you again. Until then, y'all take care. Talk to you later. Bye.